Hello and welcome back to a new Basho, a new year of Sumo, and a new episode of Kinboshi Radio. Nick, how you feeling?
I am feeling great, finally. I was terribly sick last Friday, and we're finally over it.
Nice. Just, gotta love having a child, and they're sticking their little sticky fingers everywhere, and then they stick them in your mouth.
And cough right in your face. It's great.
Right in your mouth. Right in your mouth. It's perfect. And then they laugh. That's the thing.
They're doing it out of spite. I know it.
It's just they're like, I can get away with this. He loves me. But speaking of loving things, we love Sumo. I don't know, bad transition, but let's talk New Year, Nick. I want to start things off and talk about our expectations for the sort of year on whole, but we'll talk about this coming up tournament as well, because we have an opportunity again for a Yokozuna, but it is not Takakeisho this time. It's Kirishima. If he wins back-to-back tournaments, right? Like that's what you need to qualify to go up to Yokozuna. And I don't know, the win total is more nebulous with Yokozuna than it is with Ozeki, because really they care more about those two tournament wins. But Kirishima wins in November. He should be healthy. Do we think he wins in January?
I honestly am looking at the field, and I think he stands a really good chance. He's been outperforming basically everybody around him pretty consistently. I think he could get at least 12 to 13 wins is kind of what I'm expecting.
Right. I think so too. I think he has a good chance of doing it, but for some reason I'm just not confident, and I don't know why, because when he went 9-6 in September, he was not yet recovered from that injury that screwed up his July, his Ozeki debut. But maybe that's it. Maybe it's just the idea that if he got promoted, he would have a 9-win tournament in his last 3. I don't know. Even in November, he picked up losses to Takayasu and Gonoyama, which is really interesting because I actually think that they're pretty similar fighters. But Gonoyama, a young guy who we have some high expectations for, but who really isn't there yet. Takayasu, a guy who we love and we know he's part of the sumo elite, but he's not at the peak of his career. So I don't know, but I mean, he also did beat all the big guns, so I
think that's a really good point. Like you said, he got 9-6. He picked up some losses that we don't think he necessarily should have even last time. So this is like a weird, like, normally you'd be like, oh, maybe this will be the tournament where you see, like, is he truly, there, or is he truly at that level? But it's also the fact, like, oh, but if he is, he's going to get promoted.
Right. And yeah, I think the Sumo Association needs and wants this. They've been pushing the Takakeisho thing, so, I mean, we can talk about that. Like, if you're looking over the course of this Honbashu, actually, no, let's do it 3 ways. The Sumo Association, we have felt, has been trying to push Takakeisho to Yokozuna to make up for the Terunofuji situation. So I'm curious. It is, while we're recording this, it's January 3rd, 2024. On January 3rd, 2025, who do you think of those 3 are the most likely to be Yokozuna next year? Retirements included, you know what I mean? Like, who do you think is the active Yokozuna January 3rd, 2025?
I think if I have to look at Takakeisho, Terunofuji, and Kirishima, I would say Kirishima is the most consistently healthy, and because of that, probably him. And the other 2 have such debilitating injuries.
I think so too, and like, I don't even know if the other 2 are fighting next year. You know what I mean? Like, Takakeisho, that's definitely hyperbole. Takakeisho will definitely be going next year. He's so young, but like, his health, he seems shattered to me, like physically. Like at this point, because we've said it time and time again, he is very short. He has had to put a lot of weight on in order to compete, which gives him a very specific body type that is absolutely horrible for all of his joints. And then he fights a very physical style, being an Oshidashi guy. So, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised at all for that guy to be retired at 27, but I don't know.
He's basically being held together by his pride and cupping at this point.
It's true. Yep. That's what's going on. And then Terunofuji, I don't know that he's being held together at all. Like, that guy is closer to a wheelchair than his prime. I feel, you know what I mean? Like, ay.
Yeah, as badly as I want him to come back and just like steamroll everybody and get his 10 tournaments, I think I'd be happier if he just stopped.
Yeah, I do. I'm with you. Like, I kind of wanted him to ride out into the sunset with his 14-1, but I see why he didn't. And it would have been more fun if it was a Zensho Yusho, a 15-0. So maybe he can come back and get a 15-0. How confident are you that he's fighting right away in January?
He actually is the number one reason that I'm not like guaranteeing like oh yeah, Kirishima's gonna win this, because if Terunofuji comes back,
I know.
that's it. Like, he doesn't win.
That's the thing. The last tournament we saw him fight a full tournament, it was insane. No one compared to him. No one. I know that he picked up a loss, but like it was just like barbaric levels of dominance, and I think that's why I'm not so excited about Kirishima, is I've never seen him do that. I've seen him run up massive scores, but I've never seen a tournament where it just didn't look like his opponent had a chance,
No, that's 100% true.
Yeah. So it's like almost like he might, if he wins back-to-back tournaments, then like by the numbers he might get there, and the JSA will want him there, so he'll probably end up there, but I just don't feel like he is that. He's not a dominant force. Even Kakuryu, when he finally got to Yokozuna, which they made that dude, he had to fight for it for a couple years to get up from Ozeki. But like, yeah, he would have tournaments where he just steamrolled everyone. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's still growth to be had. We've talked before about how Kirishima's actually pretty darn young still. He is only, depending on when his birthday is, I don't know exactly. But he's only like 26, 27, something like that.
My ideal would be Kirishima comes out, wins this Yusho, gets promoted, and then come March, both Yokozuna fight.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah, I mean, we could almost, if we saw sort of a repeat of the Terunofuji Hakuho scenario, or actually, yeah, you know what? Maybe that's, so first of all, I like what you just suggested, but maybe the Hakuho retirement scenario. So like Hakuho had been injured, had been sitting out constantly. The JSA were grumbling about wanting him to retire. He comes back for a tournament. He and Terunofuji are both 14-0 on the last day. Terunofuji is still only an Ozeki, but he is trying to make this push up. And on the last day, Hakuho wins. He beats the other, a virtual Yokozuna in all but name. And then he rides off into the sunset, but Terunofuji still got promoted because technically a runner-up can count as a Yusho in your Yokozuna promotion. Maybe it's that. Maybe Kirishima, maybe a 14-1 where he takes a step forward and looks dominant, but loses to a 15-0 Terunofuji. Maybe that for me is my dream scenario.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, and then we just move on with this Kirishima era, which I think for me would still feel like a little bit of a stopgap, but that's partially only because we do sort of, we have learned more about this young crop coming up. We talked all last year about this next generation of sumo. The weird promotion freezes because of COVID, I think, had really stagnated Makuuchi, the top division, because guys who normally would have been cycling out were getting frozen into their places because of COVID, which is fine and fair, and it's weird. But last year was the first year when we kind of fully recovered from that situation and had this young generation come up. And now I'm starting to see a little bit of a split. So let me know if you agree or disagree with this kind of sorting. But I think as far as the next generation, the guys who I expect to still be fighting for Ozeki and maybe Yokozuna are Kotonowaka, Atami Fuji, Hakuoho, Onosato, who we're going to talk about both of those guys in a second here, but Gonoyama. And the guys who I think have kind of fallen by the wayside for me personally are Shonan no Umi, Kinbo Zan, and Hokuseiho, of that sort of that new generation that we were both so excited for and that finally did come up last year.
No, I totally agree. I think Kotonowaka is the most stable choice.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see him Ozeki this year.
Mm-hmm.
Atami Fuji still just makes me nervous because he's rising up so fast. He's meeting the challenges and he's doing great.
I know, and they jumped him to M1 now. Yeah.
Yeah, but we've seen this happen, and I'm like, ooh, foot on the gas a little bit,
Th-
or on
th-
the brake a little bit.
Yep, this tournament is absolutely huge for the Atami Fuji story. We all think he's the real deal, but I don't know about him getting jumped up so fast. I worry about the possible. Would you say he has roughly 7 pounds of athletic tape on him every friggin' tournament on that shoulder?
Pretty much. I think soon he's going to be more tape than skin.
Yeah, I think so. He's basically a cyborg. So I don't know. I'm a little terrified about that, but it should be fine. I don't know. Like, he's good. But yeah, I'm with you. This is the biggest tournament for him. If he fights at M1 and gets 10 wins, then that's it. There's no doubt he's the real deal. If he gets 9 wins or 8 wins, it's by no means is that the end. That just means that he got smacked in the mouth by having to fight all the top rankers. And if he make kochis, then he might be closer to slipping into that Shonanumi Kinbozan Hokuseiho category than jumping up and continuing to contend. Because a guy like Gonoyama is who we have seen come up and stick around and keep grinding out these wins, even though he's kind of getting beaten up here. But every time he continues at these high ranks, he's been kind of treading water here, M4, M5, now he's M3, but 9 and 6, 8 and 7, so he's grinding. But he's been getting big wins. He's been beating the likes of Takakeisho, Kirishima, Wakamoto Haru. He's beaten the good guys.
Yes, and I just got a lot of faith in that.
Yeah, me too. I think that matters. That's the same reason why you and I always maintain our faith on Takayasu, who we'll talk about later. But it's because when he's fighting the top guys, no fear, and he can still bang with them and beat them. He's not a guy like kind of what we're seeing with, let's say, Endo or Hokuto Fuji, who when they drop down the table, then they show their class and really run through those guys and sort of pad their wins. They get an easy 6-7 wins. And then it's fine if they go 500 against the top rankers because they still have a good record. That's not what we see from the likes of Takayasu, and it's not what we're seeing from the likes of Gonoyama. They're beating the big boys too, so that's good.
Yeah, I think his rise reminds me a lot more of Kota Nowaka's, where it's been a much more gradual. He's consistent. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like what I like to see.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun to see like somebody like Atama Fuji come through and just rip up the ranks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably a more realistic approach for Gonoyama to go up slower and then actually end up stabilizing at the top.
Totally. And like to speak on Kota Nowaka, like he has now been in Makuuchi consecutively since November of 2020, and his initial promotion was actually a good chunk earlier than that, but he did drop down to Juryo and then made it back up or whatever. But yeah, like you're saying, he's had that consistent sort of story, and we think has paid off. I think that what we're seeing from him now is something that we probably were going to see somewhere in 2022, but he got that terrible knee injury. But again, I am really impressed with how he's recovered from that knee injury. And then once he got into Sanyaku, he kind of like clamped it down. We talk all the time about, Komusubi is the testing ground. People get to Komusubi and we see 3 out of 4 of them drop down heavy. But, he's one of the ones who grind it out and kick on. And so, like, that's important. And now from Komusubi, he had an 11-win Basho in July. And from Sekiwake, he's had an 11-win Basho just in November. So to be completely honest, of the 3 we're talking about right now, so the sort of like established new generation, Kota Nowaka, Atami Fuji, even though he's relatively new, and Gonoyama, same story. He is my pick to be Yokozuna. Like, let's do this. So the question I asked you before, now instead of 3 names, let's make it 6. Today is January 3rd, 2024. On January 3rd, 2025, Teruno Fuji, Kirishima, Takakeisho, Kota Nowaka, Atami Fuji, Gonoyama. Who, if any, and you can choose multiple, are Yokozunas on January 3rd, 2025?
I see Kota Nowaka up at that rank for sure. Kirishima, I do think will get it, but then Kota Nowaka would be my next choice.
I know. I agree. In fact, I would not be surprised at all if Kirishima is not Yokozuna next year, but Kotonowaka is. And that's a little ambitious because he is still a Sekiwake. He needs to get to Ozeki. And the guy has still never won a tournament, but he has come close now twice and sort of didn't stick the dismount, you know?
He reminds me a lot of Hoshoryu.
I know, Hoshoryu is so frustrating. Yeah.
It's like, I feel like their wins in the tournament, like it's very similar, but they're both like at Sekiwake, like super stable, which is crazy. With again, considering like how high that rank is and how young they both are, and they're really holding down at the top level.
Yeah,
but their wins are honestly pretty similar. I know Hoshoryu typically was maybe a little bit higher average, but I think they're not wildly far off.
I think you're right, and so that scares me a little bit. I guess the one thing I would give Kotonowaka the edge over Hoshoryu in the Yokozuna race because of his frame, because he can sort of fight that catch style, like he can open his arms wide, open his stance up, and let someone crash into him and wrap up and stabilize. And I mean, Hoshoryu, the guy has all the talent in the world, so I will just say he can do literally any strategy, any technique, any tactic. It's just a matter of getting the reps in. I fully believe in him like learning it, but Kotonowaka, I've seen it. He's doing it, and that kind of makes me a little more confident. And just traditionally, right, like size guys are more likely to make it to Yokozuna and then obviously stick there, not get injured and forced out of the sport. So maybe I'm being what we always criticize. I'm being an old fuddy-duddy JSA guy or whatever, but it's just like I look at Kotonowaka's body, I look at the pedigree, right? Having a Yokozuna grandfather and having I believe it was Sekiwake, did his dad ever make it to Ozeki? I can't remember now.
I don't remember for sure.
Yeah, but like he's got the pedigree, he's got the body, he's putting the performances together. I'm like, he looks like a Yokozuna, which again, very old man JSA of me, but I don't know, it's how I feel.
Yeah, and Kotonowaka has a lot of 11 wins. I think it'll be kind of like what we had talked about Hoshoryu before his promotion was like, can he finally push up and get into like those, the 12 plus win range?
Yeah, like so much
like the final test.
Yeah, so much grinding from Hoshoryu. Like, it's unfair of us to discredit it because he would go these massive streaks of like 10 out of 12 Basho with winning records and stuff like that, and run off 4 in a row and stuff. But like, I'm like, yeah, but it's 8 or 9 wins. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. Like, super talented, but. And that's kind of how I'm looking a little bit at Kotonowaka. Like, I know, obviously, I was just like, oh, yeah, he'll be Yokozuna next year.
Yeah.
It's just like, I just want to see him push that little bit more to get past, like, at least 12.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, he's got it.
Yeah. And now, I wanna pivot a little bit. So, there's kind of, basically, like, Atami Fuji is the protege of Teruno Fuji, but we've got a whole bunch of other proteges. Gonoyama is the protege of Goeido, but the two I want to talk about are the two newest boys, so Hakuoho and Onosato. Hakuoho is the protege of Hakuho, and obviously we saw him come up and almost be the first wrestler to win a Makuuchi Yusho on his debut, and I believe it was 109, 107 years, just bananas stat. He ultimately didn't pull it off, and in pushing to try to do it, he made a shoulder injury that he had suffered back in Juryo even worse, to the point that he had to get surgery and sit out multiple tournaments, so that now he's in Makushita. So he has to rise back up. I have no doubt that he's going to rise back up, but I'm curious if that has ended his career. But before I let you speak on that, I want to talk about his counterpart, Onosato. So Hakuoho is basically the sumo child prodigy that everyone knew was going to be great, but turned straight to pro sumo after high school. Onosato actually went the college route, and was incredibly dominant there. But so basically, these guys were both going to turn pro around the same time. Everyone knew it. Everyone was waiting for these. One, the high school, the truly young guy prodigy. One, Onosato. Same thing, but a little older. And Onosato, to me, fights a lot more like Kotonowaka, like I'm saying, that catch style, right? Like stand and catch your opponent as they throw their body into you. And he's got such a big frame, such a wingspan. He can, he survives the blows and then turns it on his opponents and just overpowers them in a way that to me feels much more Yokozuna-y, like that sometimes their wins look effortless. We know they're not, but just because of what they're able to do. Whereas Hakuoho looked dominant, but everything looked like hard work. In a good way. Like, it didn't look like he was struggling. It just looked like, oh man, look at that. He's so strong. He threw them so hard with that shoulder. So between those two guys who, when they turned pro, the talk from everyone in the sumo world was like, are these two going to be our next Yokozuna rivalry? Like, people are like, they're both going to be Yokozunas. Are they going to battle each other? Who do you think? Do you think either, both, neither? With what we know about the injury to Hakuoho and Onosato being untested, this is going to be his first Basho in Makuuchi.
I think this one, so that's tough because like I think Hakuoho will be able, like, he's so wildly talented. I know, even if it's a bummer that he had to slow down so much because of the shoulder, but if he recovers well, I think he'll cruise right back up.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know a lot about Onosato. I love to kind of see him. I want to see how he does in this before I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, he's got this.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got kind of an interesting bottom group to go against, where it's not easy, but they're not the most difficult groups. I think it's a good entry for him to be still challenging, but he's not going to steamroll anybody.
Yeah, he down there. He has a handful of what over the last year or so have been the Juryo elite. But right now they are up in Makuuchi. So Churanoumi, Tomokaze, Shimazumi, and Bushozan. Those guys are kind of Juryo elite. So those are the guys he's already been fighting and beating most of the time. But I will say he has been nowhere near as dominant as Hakuoho coming up, which is, on one hand, it's a joke. Like, it took him 2 tournaments to get out of Makushita, and it took him 2 tournaments to get out of Juryo. And now, so like, that's insanely fast. It's just that he wasn't as fast as Hakuoho, aka 3 Bashos. So whatever. But like, he has picked up losses to Shimazumi before. He has picked up losses to Kotoshoho before. So these Juryo elite can beat him, but he can also beat them. So we'll see if he's upped his training regimen, because he is the protege he's in Nishono Seki stable, so the Yokozuna Kisei no Sato. So that's another reason people are excited, is like these 2 Yokozunas who were Yokozunas together and fought each other, Kisei no Sato and Hakuho. These are their 2 proteges coming up. So that's really interesting. But then, like, you also say, like, around there in the mix, there's kind of like an aging old guard elite. Like, Endo is there, a former college Yokozuna, just like Onosato. He's dropped all the way down to there. Takara Fuji, the wily veteran who continues to always save himself despite physically seeming to be on a decline. Myogiru, Keiji veteran. Aoyama is back up, which we're going to talk about a little later. But yay! But he's obviously a tricky one. And then even a guy like Takanosho is down there. Or Oho, a guy who we have not talked about at all in our next generation thing, because I think we've all just completely lost faith in Oho. But Takanosho and Oho are 2 guys that if we rewound the clock a year, people thought those guys were going to be contending for Ozeki, So
yeah, it's a good challenging group.
Yeah, if he gets 10 plus wins down there, they will be a good 10 plus wins. Not like, and I love the guy, but Ichi Yamamoto, you and I were looking at that before the November Basho, and we're like, okay, he is gonna pad his stats, because there is some husks down here that he's gonna run through, and he did 11 wins. If Onosato gets 11 wins like that, it will have been against stiffer competition and be more impressive, I think.
No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. So, and then between the 2, I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I want to see both of them. I want to see Onosato in Makuuchi, and I want to see Hakuoho get back to Makuuchi, because I personally am just terrified of that shoulder injury. But what I'm really excited about is Hakuho is his trainer, is his stable master, and his strength is all still there. I'm curious to see if they have coached some new techniques and styles into him so that he doesn't have to constantly rely on that shoulder. Because not only was it always those sort of top-down throws, but it was like always the same arm. You know what I mean? I'm like, give it a break, guy. So I'm interested to see both of them. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Interested but scared, I guess, that they might permanently damage themselves. But there's always room for a comeback, and there's several comebacks that you and I are interested here. I'll run off just 3 of them real quick, and then we'll go into them. We already mentioned Aoyama. He's back. The Bulgarian Brute, the Beast, is returning, and I'm happy to see it. We talk about wanting to see Europeans up here. We know he's near the end of his career, but it's still fun to see that diversity in sumo. And then a couple more. Our Lord and Savior, Big Papa, is back in the Sanyaku up at Komusubi, but joining him for the first time ever in Sanyaku is Ura, because don't forget, he had basically the same caliber of injury as Terunofuji when Terunofuji fell all the way to the bottom division from Ozeki and then ultimately rose back up to Yokozuna. Ura had the same kind of thing, blowing out both knees and dropping all the way down, and now he's finally completed this journey back up to Sanyaku. But of those 3 guys making returns, what are you excited about for each of them, Nick?
I have really strongly mixed emotions for Aoyama. I'm so excited that he's back up here, but I'm like, is he gonna dip back down immediately?
Right. Is he a yo-yo now?
Yeah, and it's like, it's such a bummer to see somebody who had such a stellar career just like barely cling on. So it's like, I don't know. I'd love to see him stay up here, but if he's gonna keep dipping, I wouldn't hate to see him retire just like while he still got it.
It might be one of those things where he might get the pleasure that was denied to Tochinoshin of getting to have one last Makuuchi Basho. You know, like if he Makekochi's in this tournament, he might just retire. I don't know.
Yep, which I think it's not a bad thing. He's been in this a long time.
Yeah, he's 37, something like that.
I think so.
Yeah, that's a long time, man. Former Sekiwake, like the guy, he has had a great career for sure.
It's still like Ura's so fun to watch, but it's still weird seeing him up at Komusubi.
Really? Yeah, tell me about it.
I feel like I said, like he's very good, but I feel like he just gets steamrolled a lot. I know
it's been interesting in that M1 to M5, that sort of outsider contender dark horse category that we always talk about. He has It's not been what we wanted. Lots of 7 and 8s, 9 and 6s, 8 and 7s, just in the middle there. As opposed to when he had first made his comeback and got back into Makuuchi, he was at Maegashira 13 and ripped off a 10 and 5. From a Maegashira 7, he ripped off another 10 and 5 and got a Ginosho. Like, these are the things that got us excited about him being back.
Yes, and I think maybe that's part of it, is it's been a lot of single-digit wins. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm like, I don't think he'll stay at Komusubi. I love to see it. Mm-hmm. He's such a tricky fighter, and it's super fun. Cause like I think he genuinely is tough.
Yeah.
For some of the upper level fighters, because he fights so differently than everybody else.
Sure.
But
yeah,
I don't know if he'll stay up here.
I know, like, I look around at the top of this, and we'll pivot. We'll talk a little bit about Takayasu, but then we'll just talk about the Bansuke in general and sort of our thoughts for the upcoming Basho. But yeah, like, it's just what we were talking about with the Tommy Fuji, but like with Ura, we think he's good. We think he deserves to be at Komusubi. Neither of those things are a question. However, as a Komusubi, he is going to, if they all fight and are healthy, he's going to have to fight Terunofuji, Kirishima, Hoshoryu, Takakeisho, Kotonowaka, Daeisho, Takayasu, Wakamoto Haru, Atami Fuji. Like, oh man, I could see him losing all 9 of those fights, and if he does, well then there you go, you know?
Yeah, and honestly, like, those aren't fights that I would be upset if he lost.
No, that's the thing.
Like, with how high caliber that is.
Yeah, like there are some coin flips in there. You know, it's not a guaranteed thing that he's going to lose 9, but it's just like, man, when you flip a coin enough times, like you're not always going to get heads.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And by contrast, though, and we already hinted on this a little bit, Takayasu up there, I rattle off those names, and to be honest, he has still the strength and the KG veteranness that if I reel off those names, I'm like, nah, Takayasu can beat Takakeisho. Nah, Takayasu can still outdo Kotonowaka. Nah, Takayasu can beat Daisho. You know what I mean? Like, I reel those names off, and I'm like, okay, Takayasu I expect to be on the exact opposite side of those coin flips.
Yes, and no matter what he does to me, I will never stop having just total unwavering faith.
In
I
Papa
will
we
admit
trust.
up front
Yeah.
the 100% bias in this opinion.
100%. I love the man so much. We're both picking 15-0 Zensho Yusho for Takayasu, but let's look at the rest of the Bansuke. Is there anything that you were particularly intrigued by? Let's start with that.
I think one that I've seen a little bit of buzz about that is intriguing is the Daisho Kotonowaka switch.
Yeah, just that little positioning flip-flop. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think it's deserved. Kotonowaka really performs strongly, but I also think it's a little bit of shade thrown towards Daisho from the JSA as like he just cannot just get over that last little bit to get into Ozeki. He just can't do it so far.
Yeah, I mean, he had, like, not in terms of championships, obviously, or whatever, but just, like, in raw performance, had the best year of anyone last year. And I think, like you're saying, as far as throwing shade, it's, if anything, it's the JSA saying to him, you racked up more wins than anyone and you still couldn't get out of Sekiwake. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't somehow string those together, and no, he wasn't able to. But he's still great.
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
I also think this is like a subtle sign of like, maybe less subtle, that they are like maybe hedging their bets a little bit with Daisho.
Sure.
And putting them on Kotonowaka.
I mean, you and I have already talked about it too. Like, at this point, I would be more worried if he did get to Ozeki, because I don't want to see Takayumi Shodai again. I don't want him to get up there and lose it. So I don't know. I mean, you still hope for it for the guy. What about this year? So we already know 15-0 Zensho Yusho for this Basho, but like, does Takayasu complete the return to Ozeki and then get to ride off into the sunset? Does he get a Yusho? What do you think?
Honestly, that's what I want. I want Takayasu get up there, get Ozeki, and then kind of just, I don't know, which I want to say I want to call it good and retire, but then we've talked about, we don't want somebody to get up to Ozeki and then just dip immediately. Kind of a mixed feelings with him. Even if he gets back up to Sekiwake, I'm going to be happy with it.
Yeah. Agreed. And to be honest, if it weren't for COVID and these nagging injuries that have been popping up, like, he's been fighting at the level of a Sekiwake the entire time. You know what I mean? It's the injuries that prevented him from getting back up there. Similar to, let's talk about a guy like Asanoyama, who now has dropped all the way to M7. But it's that same kind of thing. Like, Asanoyama and Takayasu, I'm like, yeah, these guys are both definitely Sekiwakes. Will they make it back to Ozeki? I don't know.
It's super weird looking at the Bansuke and seeing Asanoyama and Ichi Yamamoto at the same rank. I love Ichi Yamamoto, but that does not make sense to me.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. What a juxtaposition. Holy smokes. Yeah, that's bananas.
And Ichi Yamamoto technically higher.
Yeah, Ichi Yamamoto outranks Asanoyama. We'll see. That'll be interesting. I hope that guy's healthy. Like, how about this? I mean, we'll ask the big question, but I don't know that it's a very complex answer. But like, well, because I mean, people were all gunning for Asanoyama to Yokozuna when he finally came back from his suspension. But I think a more realistic thing is, does he even make it to Ozeki? What do you think, Nick?
I had a really strong yes last year, as he was going to. I was like, it's just a matter of time when he gets it. But then dropping down again to M7, I'm like, ooh, is that another one where you're like, maybe Sekiwake?
Right, that's what I think, personally, and I think it's just because of timing. He's older, he's in his 30s now, his body isn't the same as it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Like you had mentioned before, like that 2-year loss was like, that's a massive chunk of his career, and a huge amount of his performance just completely taken away from him.
Yep, and it was, they took years from his prime, you know? He lost all this time when his body should have been at its physical peak, and instead then he wasn't training, he wasn't fighting at a tournament level. It just sort of devastating there. In that same vein, just, I don't know, he's kind of a yo-yo guy, but like, what do you think of this mix of like Shodai M4, Takayumi M9, Meisei the Giant Slayer at M9, but Meisei, oh man, bless his heart, but my man, I've never seen someone beat so many Ozekis and Yokozunas and then finish 6-9.
I never know what to think about him, because I look at him almost similar to Abi, where he's just there to be an obstacle.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not the win.
No, yeah. Except Abi got that one up. What do you think about your boy? Your boy, M2.
Yeah, he's gonna finish second place, obviously.
Oh yeah, just behind Takayasu. Okay. Final day.
Yeah.
Abi versus. Oh, and Redemption. God, I do not want to see that. I basically never want to see Abi and Takayasu fight ever again.
No, it scares me too much. I'm like, please don't hurt this man.
Yeah, I hate
Don't
it.
break him again.
Oh god, just like and then didn't get the win again. Oh, just pain. Yeah. So I don't know. Super exciting Basho. Realistically, so we've kind of like here I won't pivot yet. Is there anyone that we haven't talked about that you really wanted to talk about? We skipped over guys like Midori Fuji, Ryuden at M5. Now we mentioned but didn't really talk about Kinbozan. Is there anyone you really wanted to talk about here?
Honestly, nobody else super stands out as like an exception or like weirdly placed. I think everybody's right. Maybe I'd like to see Shodai a little bit higher if he does well this time. I think M4 is too low for him. I do think he should be about a 2.
Yeah.
But
again, like you said, that Abi like road bump thing, like yeah, Shodai feels like a guy who should be yo-yoing into Komusubi and down to M2. Like he's good enough that he should be the person that these young guns have to go through to prove that they get to go higher. But I generally believe that they will go through him. You know what I mean? And when they don't go through him, I'm like, Kinbozan, you couldn't beat Shodai. Get out of here.
Yep, exactly. I like to see those two in that role.
Yeah. Who's your pick? How about the let's start with a dark horse. Who do you think is sort of your wild card who maybe isn't the favorite, but things are lined up that they will probably end up contending?
Truthfully, looking at the group, I would put that at Kotonowaka.
Yeah, okay. What gives Kotonowaka the edge over someone like Wakamoto Haru, Daieisho, Takayasu? What do you think?
I don't know. I'm a little bit shaken on Wakamoto Haru right now. He had a big drop, weird performance. I think he'll come back, but it's more of a gut thing. Makes
you wonder if he was healthy or if there's something serious going on underneath.
He was one I actually did mean to talk about earlier, and I completely blanked on him. But the last performance made no sense to me, and I truly believe that he's going to come back up. But it's obviously once you've gotten to Sekewake, it's not the easiest to get up. Like he has to recover now.
Yeah, especially because we've talked the whole time where he's a guy, he doesn't have much time. Don't forget he's the older brother of Wakataka Kage, you know? He's already in his 30s.
I'm actually going to switch my answer to Wakamoto Haru.
Oh!
Because now talking through that, I'm like, well, now he's got that fire lit now where it's like he has to recover to get back up to Sekewake.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the guy has the talent. The ferocious Tachi eyes that he throws at people and his frog hopping when he just double inside grips the back of the Mawashi and just starts bopping you out, like it's just like one of the most violent things in this sport. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's got the skill, he's got the motivation. I think he's who I'm putting maybe like the top 2, maybe third place. I would put him at second. Yeah.
I like it. It's not necessarily. I mean, we spoiled it, I guess, but mine would be Takayasu. He didn't really do it last 2 Basho when he could have, but he does have back-to-back double-digit wins, so he is kind of back. And I do think there's something weird with him where he's at the point in his career where he actually benefits from fighting guys he's fought a lot before because he can sort of like spin through the Rolodex in his brain live in the match and figure out how to position himself to get the best chance at winning, whereas sometimes he can get caught off guard by younger guys, like a Shonan no Umi, like a Kinbozan, with something he doesn't expect. However, I do fear that he dropped matches to Takakeisho, Daieisho, and Kotonowaka last Basho. So if he's going to lose 3 to those guys, like he has to turn that around. You know, that was all within the first 5 days, so maybe he was just coming out a little cold that tournament. But we'll see there. And I don't know. Don't sleep on Ono Sato. I think he could. I don't think he can win it, but I do think that 11 wins is probably what he's gonna do and be talk of the town. You know?
Yeah, okay. Do you think he'll kill Fuji, where it's like
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
gonna contend to the end?
Yes, I think so, and it'll be a soft contention. Like
Okay.
he will work his way back into that final, the tops on the final because other guys ahead of him beat each other up. Like it might be a situation where like Kotonowaka and Daisho both only have one loss, and Onosato's down there with 2 losses, but then Kotonowaka and Daisho fight each other, and so all of a sudden it's like, oh look, Onosato's up there now, but it's not because he climbed, it's because someone like Kotonowaka beat Daisho. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. How about then? So besides Darkhorse, like, who do you think is actually going to win this one?
Oh, if Terunofuji doesn't show up, I am gonna place my bet on Kirishima.
Yep, I'm right there with you. That there's just nothing else you can say about it. If Terunofuji is there, if he decides that he's healthy enough to fight this after taking this time off, then I'm confident enough in him and his doctors to say that yeah, he's gonna get it. No one's as good as him. Sumo is just not in a place where anyone is as talented as him, but he needs to be healthy. But if he's not, how can you pick against Kirishima?
I don't know so I'm thinking about that too, where I was hoping that Terunofuji sits out here, then we see them both as Yokozuna next time would be cool. But also it's not. I don't think that would be a bad thing if Terunofuji did show up here to potentially derail Kirishima, because it's like you have to be that good. You have to beat him.
I love that. And we saw it with Hakuho, right? It's like that thing where even if Terunofuji is bruised, battered, and beaten, I love that in terms of like a storyline, like you're saying, like him coming and saying, Kirishima, do it then. Do you want to be a Yokozuna? Do it then.
Yep. And if he can't and it delays him, well, then I think that's fair.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really excited about that. Is there anyone that you are particularly worried about? We talked about Aoyama, but is there anything in this beginning tournament where you are kind of worried about losing a guy or anything?
Not losing anybody necessarily, but I do think Ichi Yamamoto is going to get dropped a few.
Yeah,
dropped a few. I think 7's too high for him.
Yeah, it's everything. The stars aligned. It was great. We loved the ride, but there you go. And then I'll just throw this out there. Down in Juryo, there's still lots of storylines to be excited about down there. But our boy Nishiki Fuji at Juryo 2, hopefully he can make it back up. And our boy, not our Ukrainian, let's be clear, because I'm going to talk about him. But Shishi is down there at J7, so maybe Aoyama can hold on long enough for one other Eastern European guy to make his way up. But our boy Aonishiki is... like, it's actually really impressive. So, in his debut tournament in November, he debuted at Jonokuchi 14, so in the bottom division, but went 7-0. And when they promoted him here, he went all the way to Jonidan number 10. Like, everybody knows. Everybody knows. This is the boy. This is the golden child. He just, like that. I just, crazy things happen at the bottom or whatever, but that is like the equivalent of, let me look here. It's like 107 ranks he got promoted.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and because he's in the top 10 of Jonidan, even he might not need to go 7-0. Maybe 6-1 is still enough to take him up to the next one, Sandan Mei. But we both know he's going to go 7-0 and win Jonidan as well. Like, this is the year. Where do you think, Nick? Realistically, how quickly can he rise? Do we see him... this is a stupid question. I'll ask, do we see him at Sekitori, like in the salaried ranks, aka Juryo? Can he make it to Juryo before the end of 2024? Makuuchi's too high of an ask. It's a stupid question, I think.
I think he could. I mean, if he keeps performing like this.
Yeah, like... I think I could see him going 7-0 Yusho in all three of Jonokuchi, Jonidan, and Sandan Mei. But I think that Makushita, which is the first division where you start to run up against guys who are climbing down the ladder in addition to up, that's where I think he might have a rude awakening against some of those guys, and it'll take him a little while.
Yeah, I think that's going to kind of be your speed bump there.
Yeah. But other than that, I can't wait for this Basho to start. Nick, any final thoughts?
Nothing except Team Takayasu.
Takayasu, Big Papa, Hakyoi! All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you again next time.